Hey guys, this is just one guy and I'm here playing Sifu, and I'm going to give you the 11 reasons why Sifu is a good game but it will never be a great game. Now, as you know, my channel deals with game development, and this is an interesting game from a game development point of view because it has a couple of flaws which will make sure that it'll never be a great game. And I'm going to go into the first one right here. The first one is it's a kung fu game which expects you to use hand-to-hand attacks. And if you get upgrades, if I could just go right to my upgrades, combos, your upgrades are actually upgrades to your hand-to-hand attack. So they give you all these hand-to-hand attacks and they let you pick up weapons. But the weapons, I'll show you right here, do far too much damage. You can see right there. And I'm just gonna put this. He got the best of me right there. Put this down, and you can see how much more the weapon did compared to the hand. There's no reason at all you should ever use your hands instead of a weapon. But this is a kung fu game where they want you to use the kung fu. They want you to use your hands. But the weapon does so much more damage and is so much more effective. Why would you ever use the kung fu? This means like 90% of the upgrades you get, you won't use most of the time because you'll be carrying a weapon. I've seen people actually go out of their way to bring a weapon into a boss fight. This is one of the first flaws of the game because it makes a lot of the upgrades kind of pointless and useless because most of the time you're just going to use a weapon. Okay, I'm back here and we've got reason number 2. Sifu doesn't tell you about this dodge mechanic right here. And I cannot understate how important it is because in some of the boss fights, you actually can't beat them without this dodging mechanic, especially the second boss from what I can tell. I've never seen anyone beat the second boss without using this dodge mechanic. Another thing, he's about to hit me. But another thing that the dodge mechanic does is when you dodge, not only do you dodge, but your structure, your block, it doesn't take hits. So, and when people got weapons, if they hit you, it takes up a lot of your block. But if you dodge, you don't take the hit. And when you get one of the upgrades, when you dodge, you actually gain back block. So you see that bar at the bottom, which Sifu actually doesn't explain either. Which is weird because they explain to you how to block, but they don't explain to you that your block actually has a little block bar. But you can see each time I block, it takes hits. But if I dodge, it doesn't, and it actually continues to go down. So it's more effective to dodge than it is to block. And when you get to the second boss and he has a weapon and he's attacking you, you actually need to do this. And if someone has a weapon, it's always more effective just to dodge. So I'm just gonna go on. Also, if you dodge, it leaves them open for an attack. And some people, like these two guys right here, kind of attack relentlessly. So you need to do that. Like, give you an example right here. Let me just try to position him to do it again. See, when he tried to attack me, I dodged and then immediately he was left open. So that's one of the mechanics that they never go through the trouble of explaining to you, but that you need to know to beat the game. This is an example of bad game design, because whenever the player loses, it should be the player's fault. But when you fight that second boss, it's not your fault that you're losing because they didn't give you the knowledge to defeat him. And in some cases, most of the really hard parts in the game can be, you can get through it with dodging. Like if you get into a room with a lot of enemies and they're picking up weapons, you have to dodge because if you try to block, they'll just destroy your block within 2 or 3 hits. And that just Your game should never be built to infuriate or just mess with the player. If the player fails, it should be because they lack the skill or they just wasn't good enough. It should never be because you didn't tell them about a hidden game mechanic. Okay, this is one I forgot, which I don't know why they don't tell you about this, but Sifu actually has a hidden stealth mechanic. Now, this room was giving me a lot of trouble until I figured out it's because you're supposed to take out at least 5 or 6 of the enemies in here using the stealth mechanic. But if you go the quick way, you can't use it. This is the quick way, so I can only get one enemy with the stealth mechanic. But the game never tells you it has a stealth mechanic, which is weird because you need to use it in this room so you don't get killed. You can see the stealth mechanic is if you attack them from behind and they don't see you, they just go right into the auto kill mode. And it's weird because this room, if you don't do that, they swarm you and you can rack up a bunch of deaths pretty easily because not only will they swarm you, they'll all have weapons. So it's kind of unfair for the game not to tell you that. Now here's another one. Well, another two. Not only can enemies all attack at the same time, which something other games wouldn't allow, creating an unblockable situation in some cases. Because if two enemies attack at once, you can't always dodge both their attacks, and sometimes it'll just break your block. So it creates a no-win situation. But also, they can attack off screen. So if I try to run from this situation, you'll get enemies that'll start running and doing their running attack from off screen. So there's no chance to dodge it. See what I mean? There is no way I could dodge that attack because I was already in the middle of an attack. This is something other games don't allow because it just creates an unfair situation where the player is trying to kill one enemy, and while they're in the middle of attacking an enemy, another enemy attacks. This is something that would happen in real life, but since this is a video game and you want to make the player feel like a badass, normally games like Assassin's Creed wouldn't let, or Batman Arkham Asylum wouldn't let more than one enemy attack at once, so you could correctly deal with one enemy at a time. Here, they just let all the enemies attack at the same time, and sometimes they'll purposely do it. As you can see, one enemy attacked, and while I was dealing with that one, the other one attacked me from behind. And since you can't dodge two attacks at once, you're pretty much screwed there. And you can see they're trying to do it now. If I deal with one, he attacks from behind, and some of those attacks are just straight undodgeable. Another thing is, these enemies do way too much damage. Look at that. My block is almost broken. But I'm just gonna let her hit me. Look at how much damage 2 attacks did. One combo could kill you, and they surround you with about 10 enemies. That's just ridiculous. Why would one regular enemy, these aren't even bosses, be able to kill you? And they have mini bosses in this game. One of these guys, if you try to execute them, they'll turn into a mini boss, and the weapons do even more damage. Look at that. That wasn't even a full combo. Look where I'm at in health. These enemies do far too much damage to be expected for the player to reasonably deal with them, especially when you create situations where you can literally be unable to block because 2 characters hit you. And these aren't even the characters doing their full combos. They have weapons, so Like, that's a full combo. Except some of them have combos that's even longer. Look at how much 3 attacks with the weapons will kill you. And you could get hit with that from behind. There should never be a situation in a game where that could happen and it could be the player's fault. And they don't tell you about dodging. So another thing that could happen is that first attack could break your block, and then the second and the third attack could hit you. And since they never told you, this is the first level, since they never told you about dodging, you could just be unable to deal with that. The game makes itself unnecessarily hard by keeping mechanics from the player, but then they also make their enemies ruthless and unnecessarily unfair. Now, another thing that's weird is Sifu doesn't explain its mechanics naming. This confused me when I first started playing the game, and this will confuse a lot of new players, because you'll get to one of these dragons where you can pick an upgrade, except a lot of these upgrades you're not going to know what they mean, because what is structure? Nowhere in the game did they explain to me what structure is. Is it your health? Is it your block? I didn't know. It turns out it's your block. This increases the maximum amount of block you have. This increases the health on takedowns, which is pretty simple. And this allows you to gain more block when you avoid. This allows you to gain more focus when you avoid, which is weird and funny because when I watch videos online, most people don't even know about the focus mechanic because it was another thing they didn't explain. Focus mechanic allows you to do something of a special move when you build the meter up enough. And this is another one. It increases your focus until you can get 3 or 4 of them. But the player isn't going to know what any of this means because the game never explained it to you. What's focus? What's structure? That's bad design because now the player has to make a choice to permanently upgrade one of these things without knowing exactly what they do. Now here I'm going to explain 3 things that Sifu does that makes boss fights pretty much hell. First, they don't tell you about the dodge mechanic, which you need to fight most of these guys because you can't just block all their attacks because they'll attack so often they'll easily break your block. And most of the bosses have a single attack that will just straight out bring your block to its limit. So if you block a second time, it'll immediately break. But another thing is even when you do dodge, to dodge an attack, you have to dodge before the attack happens. This means for every enemy in the game, you have to already know their attack in order to dodge, and a lot of them you have to automatically dodge. Now, I only know this because I played through the game so much, uh, but that means you have to die a whole bunch of times before you even can defeat the enemy, which means again a lot of the deaths are not the player's fault because they didn't know the attack pattern, and you can't learn it in battle because the enemies it's not like Dark Souls or something where the enemies attack and then they pause for a minute. These enemies just keep on attacking and keep on attacking, so most players will be looking for an opening, but that's not how Sifu works. In Sifu you have to create the opening, but most players won't know that because you create the opening by dodging, and they don't tell you about the dodge mechanic. And to dodge the enemy's attack, you have to already know what they're going to do. And what makes this even worse is a lot of the boss's attacks are not very clearly readable. And this guy has one of the worst readable attacks I've ever seen. And when it comes up, I'll show you. I'm just going to go in game, and first thing you have to do is dodge that. That attack right there immediately will shatter your guard. And you can see how many times he did it already. That attack right there. When he does those 3 little kicks, it looks like 3 individual kicks, but it's not. It's just one attack. Now, how the dodge works is you have to dodge before the attack is coming. If you press the dodge button at any other time, you'll be open to get hit. Now, what'll happen is you'll think that's 3 kicks when that's really 1. So you'll hit the dodge button 3 times when you only need to hit it once. And that's what I mean about not having clearly readable attacks. And as you can see, this guy attacks a lot. And because I know his attack pattern from playing this so much, I know pretty much what to do. But a new player isn't going to know that. And you're not going to figure that out for a couple of hours. You see what I mean? Those 3 kicks are actually just one whole attack. You only need to press the dodge button once. Now, look, one of the last things I'm going to go over is Sifu doesn't tell you the difference between a light attack and a heavy attack. And they may sound self-explanatory, but what happens with a heavy attack is the heavy attacks can knock people down. So when you're fighting bosses like this, it's always better to do the heavy attack after you dodge. Because if you do the light attack, you'll do damage. And eventually he'll die, but it'll just be a little bit of damage. But if you do the heavy attack, not only will it be more damage, eventually either their guard will break or they'll fall. Excuse me, sorry. Or they'll fall, and if they fall, you can get an extra damage. This makes the bosses way easier to deal with than if you just try to attack them with the light attack. But since Sifu doesn't tell you the difference between a light attack and a heavy attack, you'll just use the lighter attack because it's quicker. Because the heavy attack is slower, and you think that's the only thing. It's slower and it does more damage. But no, it knocks the person down eventually too. So I'm going to try to demonstrate here. I got kicked right there. And what's funny is they use that heavy attack thing on you to knock you down or knock you back. See right there? I just hit the guard button once and it dodged that 3 kick attack. And it's just going to keep catching me with the 2nd kick. And you can see that attack, what I mean, it automatically breaks your guard. So the game, when it first started out, it told you to block. This boss will immediately shatter your guard as soon as you try that. Which means you'll rack up a lot of deaths unnecessarily. And you can see what I mean, how it knocked him down. And now it can get an extra damage. But the game never tells you about these mechanics. They tell you can knock enemies down, but they don't tell you how. And you can see right there, he just broke my guard and kicked me in the face. And it's stuff like this that will just annoy and frustrate the player unnecessarily. Now, this last thing is something that just baffles me as to why they set this up this way. And it's how you do your attacks. Okay, now, as you can see, it has all the commands here. Now, the command for the sweep says forward, back, forward, Y. Now, these are directional attacks. But in Sifu, you don't control which direction a character is facing. It's an auto lock-on system. So what the sweep actually winds up being 90% of the time is left, right, Y. I don't know why they did this. Why would you use directional inputs in a game where you can't control the input? And I'll show you right here. When I walk up, he automatically faces the character. See, I didn't turn him sideways. He automatically faces him. So forward is not forward. And I'll show you what happens if I try to hit forward back. That's what he did. Forward back Y. He did that. And here's left right Y. I don't know why they did this because it's just so confusing. It works when you hit left right Y, but you'll never know what to do. Why would you have directional based attacks where you can't control which direction that the character is facing? It's just a baffling design. It makes the game more complicated than it needs to be. It took me an hour to figure that out because I was in the training the training scene trying to figure out how to do the sweep. And I thought I was getting it wrong when it turns out it was the game. And when I hit that left right, see, it'll do it 90% of the time. But if I hit forward back, you almost never do it. And then that's another thing. He has directional based attacks. See, if the enemy is behind, he'll do a behind sweep, which is baffling since they told you to do the sweep with the forward direction again. So you would automatically be attacking an enemy in front of you. So why would you even have a backward sweep? It's just a confusing design that's creating a situation where the player can't control. If my character automatically faces this way because that's the way the character faces, then how am I supposed to hit up down? It's not going to be up down anymore. Anyway, these are the reasons these I would say small, but they seem to be a big issue with a lot of the community, and a lot of people don't realize they're an issue. But since I do a lot of game development, I picked up on these things immediately. But this is the reason why Sifu is a good game. It has a good story and everything. Another thing is they don't really explain the story to you. It has a good story and a good opening cutscene, and after that, they don't explain the story at all. You have to figure it out. And what's baffling is they have multiple endings where they don't explain how you get the multiple endings. Because I didn't show it, but how you get the multiple endings is by not killing a boss. But they never tell you how to not kill a boss. It's pretty hard because you have to break their block about 3 times or whatever, but without killing them. So it's pretty hard. But since they don't tell you it's multiple endings, you'll just play, kill the boss because it happens automatically, and then you'll get the bad ending. So you punish the player for not knowing about a mechanic that the game itself didn't tell you exist. It's always bad game design where someone has to go on the internet and look something up about the game. Any information that the player needs to beat the game and beat the game properly should always be inside the game. If you have to look it up online and you can't look it up directly in the game, then it's always bad game design. And that's the point I'm trying to stress, which is why it won't be a great game, because it has so many baffling design issues that are just bad. Why would you design a game this way? Once you know all this stuff, it becomes a pretty good game because the game becomes a lot easier and the story becomes a lot more interesting. But 90% of the people that play the game aren't going to know this stuff. And I don't get it. I don't get why you would do it this way, because you got to figure a bunch of developers put their time and energy into this, and a company put their money into it, and now you're intentionally making your game worse. Well, you give the player a worse experience, which means they're not going to buy your future games, or they're not going to like your game, because this is a good game. It's just got so many hidden mechanics that the game doesn't tell you about, and a hidden story, and some design flaws. So it's just a lesson on what not to do in the game. If you have mechanics in your game, explain them to the player. Make sure the player is on a fair playing field. That way they don't have a bad experience. If you're intentionally creating bad experiences with your player, then you're doing something wrong in your game. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm just going to try to beat these enemies. Hey guys, it's always been my dream to create video games, and now I have the talent to create them. Fortunately, I'm just one guy, but I am working hard on a bunch of projects. Any projects that I have finished will be the link down below. I would appreciate it if you could check it out. There should also be a list of all my finished projects on screen, or any project that I'm working on. You can also check out that. But if you want to download any of the games I made, you can check out the description down below. Thank you for watching.